This video presentation will explain how to write the various types of seventh chords. If you haven't watched the triad video yet, I suggest you do that, as that contains a lot of the fundamentals for writing chords. We're always going to start with the major scale, of course, so it's a good idea to have your circle of fifths memorized or a sheet handy. If we look at the intervals that we're going to be using in seventh chords, we have our major third, and then our perfect fifth, that would be our triads. And then we're adding a third above the seventh, a third above the fifth, which gives us our seventh. And you can see that in a major scale, those intervals will be all either major or perfect. Every other interval in that scale. To write a major seventh chord, we're going to start from a given pitch, which is our root note. In this case, we're starting on D. Then we're going to add the third, fifth, and the seventh above that note, stacking them in thirds. Then we have D, F, A, C. They would all be space notes. If you start on a line, those will all be line notes. Third, we're going to apply the root key signature for the major key. And then D, that would include F sharp and C sharp. So we take that, we apply the key signature. Now we have the spelling D, F sharp, A, C sharp. And that gives us a D major seventh chord, which I will play on the keyboard now. Oops. Nice and pretty there. Again, we've got a major third, a perfect fifth, and a major seventh. Notice how that major seventh is a dissonant interval, but in the context of the chord, it actually sounds kind of pretty. So the dissonance is kind of tempered by the other notes in the chord. That is a major triad with a major seventh on top. Sometimes it's called a major seventh chord. It's kind of redundant. And there are two symbols that are commonly used for that. Actually, there's probably more. You can have D maj 7, or sometimes it's just D ma to show it's major seventh, or D delta, which looks like a triangle. I've also seen D delta 7, but it's kind of redundant because the delta implies that it's a major seventh chord. The next chord we're going to look at is a dominant seventh. This is a major seventh chord with one alteration. The seventh is actually lowered, so we don't have quite the same dissonant interval, and this gives it a way different quality. So again, we start from a given pitch. In this case, it'll be F. We're going to add our third, fifth, and seventh above that, so our eggs are nice and stacked. Oh, look at that. It's all the spaces of the treble clef. We're going to apply the major root key signature, which would include a B flat. We don't have a B flat here, F, A, C, E. So right as we have it, we've got our F major seventh chord. Delightful. To make that a dominant seventh chord, we're going to lower the seventh. So that top note is going to go from E natural to E flat, and that gives our spelling F, A, C, E flat. Okay, so that's a very common chord, which we'll explain at a future date. This is a major triad with a minor seventh on top. So sometimes it's called a major minor seventh chord, but mostly we're going to call it a dominant seventh chord. The symbols, the most common is the first one there. This would be an F7 chord. Without any sort of notation there, we assume it's a dominant chord. Some less common ways of writing that: F dominant seventh or F major minor seventh. We really want to just memorize that first one, F7. Next, we have our minor seventh chord. We start with our major triad and we make two alterations now. We lower the seventh, just as we did in the dominant chord, and we're also going to lower the third. Do you know why we're lowering the third? Probably have figured it out. So starting from a given pitch, C, we add our third, fifth, and seventh above so that we're all nice and stacked. We're going to apply the major key signature to that root note, which of course is nothing, so we still have our C, E, G, B. Here's that played. Then we're going to make our alterations. We're lowering not only the 7th, but also the 3rd. So the E flat and B flat are changed. And that gives our spelling C, E flat, G, B flat. Nice quality to that. Oops, extra note there. So that is a minor triad with a minor 7th on top, or a minor chord. The common symbols for that are C min 7, or better yet, just C lowercase m 7. That's the shortest way to write it, so that's really the best, the second one there, CM7. Next, we have our half-diminished 7th chords. Ooh, what does that mean? Well, we're going to begin with the major triad, and now we're going to make not 1, not 2, but 3 alterations. We're lowering the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. Of course, we cannot lower the root note because that's what we start from. If we lowered that, we just have a different chord. So, starting from a given pitch, we've got B flat. We're going to stack our eggs 3rd, 5th, and 7th above that. We're going to apply the major key signature of the root, which would include B flat and E flat. Well, we already had B flat, and there's no E flat, so as it stands, we've got our B flat major 7th chord. Now we're going to make our alterations. We're lowering the 3rd and the 5th and the 7th. So since those 3 were natural in the major 7th chord, now everything is going to be flat. B flat, D flat, F flat, and A flat. This would be a diminished triad with a minor 7th on top. The symbol for a half-diminished 7th chord, there's only one, and it's a degree sign with a slash through it, showing that it's half-diminished. And of course you need the 7th there to denote a 7th chord. And then there's the fully diminished 7th. This is a major triad with 3 alterations. Yes, we're going to lower the 3rd and the 5th, and then we're going to lower the 7th by 2 half steps. Okay, so it's a diminished 7th on top. Almost always, almost always, you're going to have a flat note as the top note, or even a double flat for this type of chord. So if we start from G, stack our eggs on top of G. We're going to apply G major key signature, which is F sharp. So we've got G, B, D, F sharp. Then we're going to lower the 3rd and the 5th and the 7th by 2 half steps. So the B is going to become B flat, the D is going to become D flat, and then the F sharp is going to go to F natural, and then finally to F flat to be 2 half steps lower. So G, B flat, D flat, F flat, fully diminished 7th chord. We have a diminished triad with a diminished 7th on top of it. The symbol for that is the G with the degree sign and a 7th. So similar to the half diminished, but no slash through it. In reviewing these, you're going to see a strong relationship from each chord as we progress through them. Starting with the major 7th chord according to the major key. Major triad with a major 7th on top. That the dominant 7th has only one alteration. We lower the 7th. That is a major triad with a minor 7th. Then we're going to keep the 7th lowered and lower the 3rd for the minor 7th chord. That's a minor triad with a minor 7th. Then we're going to lower the 5th, and that'll give us a half diminished 7th chord, which is a diminished triad plus a minor 7th. And then we can lower that 7th one more half step with a double flat so that we have a diminished triad with a diminished seventh.